Okay then, iCarly.
Don't make fun of my stripe with my... I am influenced by that, but I like the look, and I'm fine with it.
Glad you picked up on that. No.
Hi, and welcome back to Popversations, and today we are going to talk about Candyman, the new one, the sequel? It's a sequel?
I think it's a sequel.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, obviously.
More of a, I seriously think it's more of like a spiritual sequel, if anything.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad, it's not a bad thing, because we're here to talk about the good first.
Yeah.
What's...
I liked the look of the movie. It looks great. I liked the score. I liked the opening. It kind of reminded me, in a way, of like the really interesting opening for The Invisible Man. Or just had like the waves crashing and stuff, and it just had a really cool feel to it. And it is kind of like the original.
The buildings kind of looked like a honeycomb. I don't know if you noticed that. I think it was like a... That's just me personally. I thought it looked like a honeycomb, and I kind of missed the gothic aesthetic that the first one had, but the look of the movie is great. Nia DaCosta is a very talented director, but slowly but surely the good things eventually come to an end. I thought that the performances were overall pretty good. There were some characters that didn't necessarily need to be there, but I do think that overall everyone went for it, and it really I don't know, it kept me in it. There was enough comic relief to where it wasn't comical, it wasn't laughable.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was I think the thing that I liked about it was, I liked the direction. The thing I liked the most about it was the direction that the movie was going, and what they were building on it. They were expanding what was already there instead of just redoing it, instead of just doing something completely different that didn't make any sense. They were taking the story that was there. And I love the puppet imagery for all the flashbacks, for all the stories that they're telling.
That's one of the best parts.
That was really cool. The visual of that was so neat.
There's memorable shots that cause sort of a creep, give you that creep factor. For instance, when he's reflecting on the local neighborhood guy, the Sherman guy that was coming out, it kind of hangs on that hole in the wall where somebody's going to come out of it. It's very eerie and it's very well done. The gore, I guess you could say, it wasn't too over the top. It was
a lot of you're not seeing it though.
I will say, why does the first girl's blood that dies in the bathroom look like melted sticky candy?
I don't know, I just wish you could have seen more, especially in that scene, you're not seeing it really, any of it.
They're playing off of the whole what you don't see.
It was almost too much of it.
They're doing it off of sound and the slashing and the gashing, and we'll get into why we both felt that wasn't as effective as was previously.
And honestly, I like the guy that plays the lead. I think that he did a good job. I think that the direction his character was going...
It was a good idea to make him an artist. It was a good idea to...
Yes, I like that angle of it. I like, his work. I like I like the idea that they're still in the same place and all that. I think the whole general overview of the movie, the general feeling of it, the general idea of it is what we liked, and it was just the little executional things, because the main thing that I didn't like was it seemed like they were taking the movie in a certain direction, to where he was going to be the villain and he was just going to turn into Candyman based on him sliding down that slippery slope of feeling like he wasn't doing well as an artist anymore. And they could have done that, and then they just take this total 180 and make it so that he's an anti-hero. And I feel like it was probably a test audience thing. I feel like people didn't like it, and they changed it at the last minute because that's what it felt like.
They kind of dropped a bomb in trailer number 2 where like you watch it in comparison to trailer number 1, you go, wait, hold on a second, why was this added? And it seemed like it was strategically added, but the callbacks to the original, I thought were very, very good. It wasn't trying to do too much spam service. It was just, I think, the perfect amount. And that's part and due to it being its own thing, which I respect a lot. And just the storytelling, and the picture, like just the tiny little details, and listening to her voice on the tape, listening to the original interaction that she had with the 2 cleaning ladies, talking about the neighbor that died. That was a nice little touch, and that kind of brought me back into the aesthetic and the atmosphere of the old film. And I would say, I don't know, just
I thought it was such a good idea that they didn't play with the idea that the first one had of, there is that question, especially when you see it for the first time, of, is this all in her head? Is she just crazy? Is that real? And it takes a while until you get that payoff, for sure. And that's when she's in the psychiatric facility and he kills the doctor. That's pretty much when you know, for sure. And I like the idea that they didn't do that over again. That they weren't like playing with that idea. It's like, no, from the first one, that it's a real thing.
Separate.
And everybody knows that whether they've seen the first one or not. They hear that name like you've heard of it. It's like one of the, big horror villains and stuff, which she's still very underrated, I think. But I think another thing that I didn't like about this movie was the art aspect of it was really cool, but at the same time, they're saying a lot of stuff nobody's going to understand. It's a little inaccessible. Like, they're all kind of, in this high society, almost like kind of world that we don't really get. And I think it would have been better if he was, just, a little bit lower on the totem pole even. But I do like the idea that they're, kind of trying to play with, he's only gotten so far because of her, and he's trying to make it on his own. That's part of the struggle and the tension that he feels and stuff like that. And I think the other thing I mainly didn't like was the very beginning, like the introduction to Candyman is like a ghost story in like the first 5 minutes, which seemed very set up. He could have just been researching all of that stuff on his own. He could have just been walking through Cabrini Green.
It could have been suggested by his art lead guy or whatever.
Or he could have just been walking around the neighborhood and got inspired and started looking up stuff about it because he's like, here's the new gentrified version and here's the old version, and you have that difference and be interested in the history of it. And he could have just done it all on his own and found out that way. And that would have been so much more interesting too, because it kind of make this weird disconnect that he's the child from the first one, he's the baby, and his mom is in this movie, and just Vanessa Williams is in this newer one as well, and she looks amazing. And how did the guy know the story? Like, she says like somebody broke the pact and they talked, but isn't it a little convenient that somebody who talked and eventually got back to him? I would have believed it more if he would have heard a little bit about the story, looking through the old newspapers, and it connects with him for some reason and he doesn't know why.
They should have played with the idea of, like, it would have been more interesting if, like, he was destined to come back to it. Like, play with the idea that he's being drawn back in.
Maybe they just moved back to town.
Well, maybe more of like the like when his mom said the mold was broke, and she kind of does tease it where she says, he found his way back to you. You could have played off of that more. Like, the more people that are getting it out there, the more he's drawn in, and it's like destiny. Where you parallel the first film where he's supposed to die in the fire and be a part of, Candyman's plan, and have it come full circle. It doesn't happen that way. And for a lot of people, the multiple Candyman thing, from what I read, people didn't like. I understand why they did it, and kind of this whole encapsulating one entity.
I like it though, because I think it's very interesting that
it's the story that you hear.
Because the guy
change.
Yeah, the guy said, "This is Candyman to me."
Yes.
And then, like I was saying, it just reminds me a lot of, like I watch Supernatural, and it's a tulpa. It's it changes based on what people say about it.
I would put it in the positive. I just think that
I liked it too.
People that would probably put it in the negative. But the laundromat character, strictly there for exposition.
And it would have been fine, and they could have just kept it, or they could have killed him off. But the whole ending where he's trying to make a new Candyman and he's obsessed with it, I don't know why they have to. There's hardly ever a good horror movie that ends that way, where this person's obsessed with it and they're the one pushing everything forward. It was just like the new Halloween where that guy was obsessed with him.
Much like Jeremy Irons in Dungeons and Dragons, this guy is going for it.
Yes,
based off of his mannerisms and everything that everything he is putting into, he is going for it. And there's parts about that I liked, but like you said, you could have had two scenes where, yes, he encountered him and he saw his sister die and stuff like that.
Or he could have had his mom play a way bigger part. He could have started doing research and, somehow found out that she knew about it, or that he had lived there or was born in the hospital earlier, and said, I'm getting all these different stories of Candyman from all these different people, and then she could have unified it and given him the story that she knew to be true.
A thing I didn't think of before, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but first I gotta get insight from you. If Sherman was innocent, and Sherman was the one that he saw in the elevator, then why do you have a razor blade in the candy that Anthony picks up? What is that symbolizing? That's the one thing where I was kind of sitting there and I didn't really...
I wonder if it's almost supposed to be a unifying theme kind of thing, because in the original, she finds candy with a razor blade in it, and it's why is that there? They don't really explain it necessarily. And like I said, I do like movies that don't feel like they need to explain every little thing, and it's just an aesthetic choice.
Cool. It could have been almost like a reverse callback thing, where that candy was from the neighborhood guy, the Sherman guy, that was the first person, at least in that neighborhood.
I always thought of it it was some sort of offering, because in the first one, everything says sweets to the sweet.
Yeah. And you only see that one time in the final scene, when he's in the church and he's about ready to get his arm sawn off. It's painted on the behind him. And
you would think that would have been a part of his art, because it's such an interesting phrase to use.
He should have just been... You didn't need the coat thing. The hook, obviously.
His painted overalls would have been such a cool, his own version of the Candyman.
Because to me, what most people don't even pick up on is that there's 3 or 4 different ones that we see throughout the film, but you can't freaking tell because they're all wearing the same getup. You know what I mean? And it would have just been cool to kind of know which one all the victims saw.
Because the whole point of how... And it's... I suppose... if you're going to go by all the other people, that became Candyman in other, in all those people's eyes, is they were wrongfully accused and killed in a very brutal way, and that's why they are what they are. So that wouldn't have necessarily happened with him, just the way that the story was going. It wouldn't have made sense in that way. But I like the idea, especially when he's in the apartment of, that critic, and he's oh, go do it in the mirror. He's starting to try and manipulate people into dying.
You don't see
and
her...
pushing them to do it.
I like how they didn't show her doing it. And then, obviously he shows up, so you're oh, she did it.
I thought the way they showed her death was interesting. It was you're from far away.
It was showing how everything around her is normal and calm. And I think they were going for, sort of thing, if that makes sense, where like there's chaos happening in this big, kind of high-rise apartment, and then everyone else is just enjoying their time.
It's
while
interesting.
this woman is just getting brutally murdered by a vengeful.
But that would have been such a cool path to see
And
him go down. Like he just knows that it's real, and he starts using it to get rid of people he doesn't like and that were mean to him.
My biggest gripe
would have been cool.
is the people that die in it not being as purposeful as the people.
Yeah, it was just two people to really dislike in the beginning. Like you were meant to not like them. You want them to die. And then all the girls in the high school, it's just a trailer scene. Like it has no effect on the story. And if they would have had
the second one, that professor, because you haven't seen the second one of the original trilogy, but the professor is giving a lecture in the first one on Candyman, and he turns to the mirror and says it 5 times and summons him and gets killed in the bathroom. And my point with that is, as many gripes as people might have with the 2 sequels, everyone that dies, the death feels purposeful, if that makes sense. Like, yes, he can choose who lives or dies, but I don't necessarily get that sense in this new one, if that makes sense.
It does feel a little bit like he's got no choice, and like he's you're controlling him somehow by saying his name, which doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
But I think towards the end they go back to he kind of picks and chooses, and it could just be. But they didn't have him talking in this one because.
By the way, why does she have to be the one that tells everybody? Why all of a sudden is his girlfriend the one that needs to tell everybody about what's going on? And yes, the voice thing of the one guy that had everything crushed, and then
Yeah, Sherman can't talk because his throat was what killed him when he died, and so you don't have that thing of people don't believe in this anymore, so I had to come back, or you're
But it was just more effective.
And he could have said to him you doing your art and you researching this and telling people about it is making me come back, and then if he just didn't care or he was trying to use it to his own advantage, it would have been way more interesting just to hear that even once from even the one that isn't the original Candyman, to say why they're there. Because it's a little unclear.
Everyone understands why I thought that the de-aging was fine, and
I really didn't mind it. It was pretty good.
The one line and everything, I just wish, and maybe it's just certain people like me being way too greedy about this thing. I just wanted a little bit more, just the way that he speaks in the first one. It's not just intoxicating to Helen; it's intoxicating to the viewer watching. That's what I've always argued is Tony Todd made that movie just based off of how he played the character and how Clive Barker's story, which was originally a British white dude, called the Forbidden or whatever, totally different than what Clive Barker eventually, puts into the film. And I just thought that the whole gothic presence and the score and the feeling,
the piano is amazing.
The feeling that just ick and you feel like you're in the grit of Cabrini Green, as opposed to everything's gentrified, but yet you're living there kind of thing. You feel like you're on that journey with Helen. And you do feel like you're slipping into that madness.
She carries the first, almost more than half the movie, because he doesn't show up till pretty late.
44, 45 minutes in.
And I love in this one, his girlfriend has her own backstory and she has her own things going on, and I wish they would have gotten into it almost a little bit more, with her dad and why she's into art and why she, and that's just, it was such a cool thing.
But what's good about that is there was more character development in this one. There were more characters to invest in. I guess you could say, like, you're not just invested in Anthony, you're invested in his girlfriend and what got going on, and you're invested in the Rourke guy. Is that his name? I can't remember his name.
And that speaks to say something that we don't remember.
What I'm saying is, like, there were unlikable characters like the high school teen, and again, like, that scene was just, I think, more for shock value than anything, not really purposeful.
Well, the people that were killed in the original were all people that she cared about. They were all people close to her, or people that were trying technically to help her, because his whole plan and the whole point was to get rid of any reason for her to live, so that she would want to be with him. And that was, he says that, he's like, all you're going to have left is my desire for you. And that's like, that's an interesting concept. And I do like how, she's got some stuff going on with Trevor, like her husband. And then, her friend's a little bit one-dimensional and stuff, but that's okay, because you get the sense that they've been friends for really, a long time. And that's why I like that his girlfriend is in this. It's rounding it out a little bit more. But I almost wish, like, she didn't have a brother, and it would have just been her, and her backstory would have been enough to carry the movie.
The most telling scene, and what I thought was so brilliant about the first one, was the scene where the psychiatrist dude dies, and he's showing her the footage, and he's not there, and she's freaking out.
She says she doesn't understand, because as far as she knew, when she looked at those pictures, she saw somebody in the picture behind her. She thinks he's real.
Even after he dies, and he undoes, like, her stuff so that she can escape, and then, flies out the window, you're still left sitting there going, did he really fly out the window? Was he really there? Did she escape? And did she gut that guy? Like, that's what's so...
I mean, for me, that's the turning point where I kind of was like, okay, he's, like, truly there and stuff. But you could make the argument that it's a question still, yeah.
Right. And I do think that he does, like, fully manifest in there because of her belief. But what I mean is, like, the slow and gradual burn to get there, like, causing tension and having him pop up every so often to cause, like, to plant that seed of doubt, in our brains of, holy, like, is this guy really here?
And and I'm glad they didn't try and, like I said, do it again in this one. But the tension, I think, in this one should have came from you seeing him start to do bad things.
The ending, like, I understand, like, his name is already out. Like, there's already been multiple murders, and like I said, she's all of a sudden picked because why? She's Anthony's girlfriend, and Anthony is, becomes, like, the new Candyman, because essentially what happens in the end is he becomes, it is a little anti-hero-y. Like, I'm not saying, like, what the officers, like, what they were trying to do to her wasn't messed up, but at the end of the day, no matter how you try and swing it, like, it was pretty anti-hero, like,
he's not supposed to save people.
And I just don't know if, like, I just don't know if that was, like, the direction or, like, the essence of the character when, like we talked about earlier, like, your other kills aren't making a whole lot of, like, purposeful sense. And if they did, I would have a different, like,
because the first ones were purposeful and to make her feel isolated and stuff. And, her death, and that's the thing, like, in this one too, is, like, he's not supposed to be, like, a hero that saves people. Those people in Canadian were terrified of Candyman, and that's the whole point.
They did not. So people were, like, tearing their mirrors off of the, like, that kind of stuff. Like, they didn't want mirrors in their, like, apartments, and they were getting offerings.
Yeah, and it's, the only difference is, I guess, well, no, it's not really a difference, but I guess in the end, like, she's kind of a savior in the end, and they kind of deify her in that painting, like, at the very end. But at the same time, like, she still ends up being a villain because of, and it's partly because of what everybody else thought of her. The only people that knew the truth were the people that lived there. Everybody else thought what it says in the movie, that she went crazy and went on a killing spree. So she still was taken by it, and if that would have been what they did, Like, he sacrifices
It would have been
himself
different.
to save his girlfriend, but he still becomes it.
Also, I just think that maybe part of the reason I feel that the issues that are being tackled is better in the first one is because I got that grit feeling. Like, you're actually at Cabrini Green. Like, that's an on location filming, and Helen really truly feels like the outsider.
And it's dangerous to be
and it's
there.
very dangerous.
And even her friend is so scared to be there. And,
right.
But it's a cool thing about that movie. It's not the kind of horror movie where you're questioning, like, why are they still here? Why are they still doing this?
Right.
They have a very clear motivation that they want to be published and they want to be better than do better than the men did with the story.
Right. And I think part of it is the aesthetic, because it works so well. Because it's not saying that what this movie is trying to do. There's nothing wrong with what it's trying to do. I just think that as far as execution, and I don't want to be like the original is like always going to be better than, like, that's not what I'm saying. Because I think that they are, like we talked about, they're two completely separate entities, but one tries to do the same thing. It just does it in a different way, and it does it in a different way that I felt was more effective. That got me invested in, look how these people are living in fear of their everyday life with where they live, and now they got to worry about this urban legend that is allegedly, killing neighbors through mirrors, and people are hearing that and hearing the screams, and like they don't even feel safe going outside, because it's also the play on that place used to be looked at as a paradise for like its first.
And they did a good job
years.
of that in the flashback, showing how it was a good place to live. Like, it was nice then, and all that, and it just kind of got abandoned by the city. And I think it's any movie that's been made. We didn't particularly like The Invisible Man just because we felt like it was overrated, but at the same time, was it trying to do something original with a source material that already existed? Yes, it was. Is this trying to do the same thing? Yes, it is. Yes. So both, I think, that should be respected in both of those, especially with horror. You want some new things going on. I feel like that's what people probably liked about both.
Maybe the biggest thing for me is like I really, really wanted it to scare me, and I think maybe some people might come out of it with their expectations way too high of like, because I mean, so many people that I've talked to, I mean, that 1992 Candyman.
Our dad even says, he said, I don't like watching scary movies, and he's like, that movie used to scare me.
Yeah, that movie is terrifying to a lot of people, and I think maybe some of us, when we went into it, were really hoping to completely recapture that, and it just, like, at least for me, it maybe for some of you, but it just wasn't there for me, and I wanted it to be there so bad.
And I feel like if it would have had that just a little bit more, it would have taken it a little bit more over the top, and we could overlook a lot of other things.
And it kind of, like, just like one more tidbit about the ending, it kind of really felt like it was rushing to get there just a little bit. Like, I'm not saying it needed to be 15 or 20 minutes longer.
It's like we're going along, and then it ends. And like that's what it was like.
It's like boom, they're both kidnapped. Boom, like it really just felt like they couldn't wait to get to that point, and then the fact that it was rushed. And I think maybe that's another reason why it doesn't feel so organic, because it kind of just feels like, well, we're just going to do it, and there it happened, and then the one line, and then boom, movie's over, and you're just like, I mean, like, what? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely, in, at least for me, like, if I were to give it a solid rating, like, it is C plus B minus. It is not a bad movie at all. Like, it's not a bad film.
Nope.
It's just not one that I would like. And I saw it in theaters twice. For different reasons, but it's not one that I would like seek out to own, and it's not one that I would seek out to watch again. I would just go and watch the 1992.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I watched the movie right after we saw it, and then Lily, our sister, watched Candyman. You know, she saw it too, the new one, and then I showed her the original, and I watched it like a week after I had just watched it, and I wasn't like bored with it. I wasn't tired of watching it, and I just watched it a week before.
It holds up to this day because it truly broke. It really broke the horror mold. It wasn't like anything.
I mean, the fact that they changed like the race of the character to more fit like the story that they were doing and weren't afraid to do that at that time, I think was really cool as well.
And again, you know, you're talking about something that came out in 1992, and a lot of things that they bring up and a lot of things that Helen is correlating to why these people are afraid are still things that we see today, and that's what getting a message out to the audience is. Like when you have something that holds up like that, and maybe not like maybe most of us, I'd like to think with Levelhead, don't want that type of stuff to hold up in a sense. But what I mean is when you have something that powerful and that organic and that good, it will carry over. It will feel like.
And the new one did do that too. It was taking it was taking the fact that that's still something we see play over and over and over again, and that's the whole thing is that there's so many different like people that became Candyman, and that's what's sad about it is that it keeps happening.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think that was a good message of this one as well, and I think that idea was good, and it just takes that idea of this is happening over and over again, and it's just replaying itself, and that's a fact. It's not a question. Yeah. This is the reality. This is what it's like, and that's what we've seen, and I just think it's it's a good way to modernize it. I think, and I think that I agree with you. I think the ending was rushed. I give it a solid B-. Like it is not something that I would really want to.
No, but this
keep watching. But
this is a great foundation for Naya moving forward. And I know that there's not a whole lot of people that are fans of Jordan Peele, but to me, regardless of if someone has a problem with Get Out or Us and the convoluted plots or whatever. I do think that at his core he understands what horror is, and I do think that
I just want to see him push it a little bit more into, and maybe he's more into. I think it's almost more a psychological, kind of horror that he's into. But I feel like he really could do just straight up horror, and it would be awesome.
I do really want to see him legitimately just go straight traditional slasher and try and break the stereotypical molds that we see in slashers. So, Cabin in the Woods is making fun of any horror movie type that's ever been made. Jordan Peele should do that and take it further. And I know that he can do it. And I wish that I could think of another property off the top of my head that I would love to see him do. And if anything,
The People Under the Stairs.
The People Under the Stairs.
The People Under the Stairs has that same kind of social commentary as well. That's still very relevant.
And I would love if he brought Naya back on board and she wanted to give it another go. I would be totally okay with that. Because, like I said,
I've been saying for years that one is ripe for a redo. If there's anything that could be redone, it's that one because, like I said, I think the themes of it are very still just so relevant.
It came out the year I was born, so it came out in 1981. It came out the year before Candyman, so that should tell you at least something. But overall, not bad. I think everyone was just wanting it to be so great. I know that there are people that think it's great, and that's great. If some of you think that it's great,
and we're just very picky because this is something very dear to us because we just really like the character and everything, and it's just something that we're very picky about, and that's the stuff we feel we want to talk about.
And part of it, though, another thing that I think people need to understand is that there was some good lore in the sequels. There was something in there that at least I thought worked, and could have been. It could have been a lot better. Sure, you're living in a time and an era where sequels were pumped out like it was nothing. And so sometimes the substance isn't always there. Sometimes they don't.
Especially for the horror movies around that
Especially
time.
for the horror movies. So, but it did have a lot of good ideas, and I think it dived deeper into the main one that the Candyman that most people associate with. Not saying that the other ones, are trash or they don't matter or whatever, but it's like the one that people like really gravitate towards, and they had a good thing going there. We'll see where the sequel goes, because I am pretty sure that's what the plan is. And this movie was very, very successful.
And they've expanded. Say what you want about the movie, good or bad, but they have expanded the lore of it. They have made that world a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And that's I think if you're gonna make a sequel, maybe this wasn't our favorite or something, but if you were gonna build off of this, like I wouldn't mind that, because it does.
Yeah.
Make it so that you can do that in a way where it's not set up for it wasn't like clearly set up for a sequel either, which I like. Like it wasn't just saying like, here's the next one, like here's the next one on a plate, like here's what it's going to be about.
Ladies and gentlemen, is what flips my trigger the most, especially about modern horror. It's just you can't really blame it. I mean, look how much money these things pump out. I mean, just one off the top of my head is look at Ouija, the first Ouija, and then look at somebody like.
And I mean, look at the new Mortal Kombat. Like they were setting up a sequel, like in your face, like crazy. Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways it's very presumptuous.
Some of them do get better, because Ouija Origin of Evil, mostly because Mike Flanagan took over. And Mike Flanagan understands horror because he did Oculus, he did Haunting with Hill House.
Oculus does scare me.
It was very underrated. And by the way, WWE films. Don't know if you know that or most people know that. It's pretty weird, huh?
It's pretty weird. It is
pretty weird. But he understands horror. James Wan understands horror. And maybe we can get into a Malignant conversation here in the next couple of days. We don't know. But
it's getting to be spooky time.
We've been rambling for 40 minutes and 25 seconds, which I really hope a lot of people have stuck around for. Because that's just what we do. We do this because we love it. We don't, this is for all of you. We want to hear back from you. And if there was anything that
we love answering people, so.
And we like any interaction. So if there was something that we pointed out where you're like, oh yeah, I understand that,
or I disagree, or this is why.
Or look at it like this, like the razor blade thing. Like somebody explain that to me, because I don't know what the symbolism is there. I don't know if it is a callback. I don't know. It's just not something that I process. So I'd be grateful if somebody could give some insight on it.
So let us know what you think, and we will see you next time.
Bye.